Broadcasting from Orchard Park, New York,
and Boca Raton, Florida,
it's the Freight 360 podcast. From freight broker sales tips to sports talk, this podcast is all about helping you grow as a freight broker. We're your hosts, Nate Cross
and Benjamin Kowalski.
Let's talk freight. All right, welcome back for another episode of the Freight 360 podcast. Today's a special one. We got an awesome guest, and we'll get with him in just a second here. But first, if you are brand new, make sure to check out all of our other content. Share us with your friends and colleagues in the industry. Leave that comment, hit the subscribe button, all that good stuff. Check out our website, freight360.net, for an entire free library of all of our content. And if you'd like more information on our training and coaching, check out the Freight Broker Basics course. It's a full-length, self-paced course taught by Ben and myself on everything from how to start a brokerage, build up a customer base, build that carrier network, and even hire the right employees. And this episode is brought to you by Blue Book Services. Blue Book is the resource you need if you're transporting fresh produce. Their online database contains thousands of companies throughout the produce industry supply chain. You can easily search their database to generate new sales leads. Blue Book's credit rating help you avoid companies with high credit risk, and their sales team can help resolve disputed loads. To learn more, go to producebluebook.com and click join today. That's producebluebook.com. This podcast is also brought to you guys by DAT Freight and Analytics, and we've got the president and CEO, Satish Maripuri, on with us today. He's also the group executive at Roper Technologies. Satish, welcome to the show. If you don't mind, just for anyone out there who's either new to DAT and isn't familiar with the leadership or wasn't aware of you coming on board this year, just give a brief recap on who you are, your role, and kind of how you got into it.
That's great. Well, thanks, guys, for having me on the show, and looking forward to it. Satish Maripuri. I've been the president and CEO of DAT since the beginning of this year. I've been with Roper Technologies close to 5.5 years now, and overseen some of the strategic investments that DAT is making. Come with a very strong technology background. Been in artificial intelligence for almost 10 years now. Was with Nuance Healthcare, the makers of Dragon Medical Speech for hospitals. If you've ever gone to a doctor and the doctor dictating, that was technology that I was very much involved in and leading prior to the 10 years prior to coming to Roper. So glad to be here.
Very cool. Well, awesome. We're going to have a great episode today talking about some of the stuff related to fraud and what DAT is doing about it and kind of the future. So we'll get into that in a little bit here. But Ben, how are you? How's South Florida treating you? Well, actually, you guys are in Florida, and I'm up here in Buffalo. It's not fair.
Yeah, doing well. Had Halloween last night. Did a little bit of trick or treating. It was a little bit nice weather. I think you had snow. You were telling me at least that was what was on the forecast.
Yeah, we ended up getting about 3 inches of snow in Buffalo last night. It's still melting because it's above freezing today, but it's not going to stick around. It's going to be almost 60 next week at some point. But yeah, classic October snow in Buffalo right there. So
I could see the rivalry here between the two of you.
Yeah.
Two opposite corners.
Yeah, exactly. But I do love getting down to Florida, and when Ben and I get to hang out together, that's always fun.
You know what's funny? I'll bet we're pretty close to exactly the same proximity from the edge of the actual country. Like from you to Canada and from me to Key West, or at the very least tip, I'll bet are pretty close. I mean, if you literally drew it on a map.
Well, I mean, Buffalo borders Canada, so.
Oh, you're closer. Yeah, I'm like
we have 3 bridges
miles
from Buffalo that go right into Canada. But I mean, still very close. Yeah, very close. Switching gears to sports here. First, MLB. So the World Series is going on here. Currently it's Arizona and Texas. I was watching last night. So today's Wednesday, but on Tuesday night, Texas was up like 10-1 or something. They still won it, but it wasn't as much of a landslide. It ended up being like 11-5 or 11-6, something like that. But currently Texas is up 3-1. So this series could be over before this episode, releases. Or if they tie it up, or if they win, Arizona wins tonight, it'll play game 6 on Friday. So we'll see. I do want to bring in our producer, Steven, for this next part. So on football news, Steven is a Bengals fan and I'm a Bills fan, and we've got the rivalry this weekend. So Steven, I want to know what your take is. Your boys are 2-point favorites, although you're at home, right? What's your take on the game?
Yeah. It's I think I was looking at the history, and the Bills are 17-13
versus in
all
like
time.
franchise
Yeah,
history.
all time. But with the way the Bills have looked the last couple of weeks, and the way the Bengals have looked the last couple of weeks, I like the 2-point favorite. I might bump it to 4. That would be
Wow,
me. But
Wow.
Oh, shots
very
fired.
aggressive.
He's leaning
it is.
in.
I will say it is going to be exciting, especially with the DeMar Hamlin incident last year during prime time at
Yep.
Cincinnati. So I'm sure they'll probably do something for that. It'll be an exciting game, especially
Yeah,
for the
for
NFL
sure.
in total.
Definitely. Well, I don't think it's going to be a close game. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. I think it could be a close game, but I think either the Bills. I think one team. I think it's very likely that one team beats the other by 2 scores because one team just like slips and falls, and it could be the Bills who lost to the Patriots in an unexpected loss a couple weeks ago. Satish let us know in the green room that he's actually a Patriots fan since the mid '90s, but we'll see. We'll see how the game goes. Satish, do you actively follow your Patriots
Yeah,
or
of course, of
okay?
course. I mean, I live down in Florida right now, but still a loyal fan of the Patriots. I
There
take
you
a lot
go.
of flack for it, but hey.
It's a bit
Take
of a
it.
rebuild for them right now.
Well, I've been through the down years in the '90s and then the up years, so you can't give up. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Stephen, before we let you go here, I wanted your take because for folks that don't know, Stephen was a corpsman in the Navy, which is essentially a combat medic. And if you guys didn't see, there's a hockey player that used to play for the Pittsburgh Penguins. It was playing over in a European league that passed away from a skate to the neck recently. And Stephen, I want your take on it as a sports fan and as a medic for that matter.
Yeah, so I was freshening up on the article, but his name was Adam Johnson. He played for the Penguins last year. Now he's in a European league this year. And at some point during the match, I think the guy's name was Petgar, did what people are calling an unorthodox move, and that skate caught up in the carotid artery. So for those who don't know, you got 5,000 milliliters of blood. Your heart will pump 70 per beat, and during physical activity, you could bleed out in a minute, 2 minutes. And he was able to skate off the ice. I do know the recent article I just read from yesterday, the police are actually involved in investigating what they think might be intentional. We'll see what comes with that, but
Yeah,
it'll
that's
be
crazy.
it'll be interesting because I know back in the '90s there was an incident in the NHL where a goalie took a skate to the
Sabres
net.
goalie. Yep.
Yeah, and they required neck guards after that. So I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes common practice
Yeah.
in most leagues. I know the European
The
League has required it
the
already.
uh the one, yeah, the NHL one that happened was they said the only reason he survived that is because their medical staff happened to be down on the side of the ice rink where where the goalie was when it happened.
Yeah,
Where
and I think he hit his jugular vein, whereas this guy hit his carotid.
oh, okay.
So
I don't know the difference.
yeah, so the
Great
jugular
broker, not a
vein,
medical doctor.
yeah, the jugular, it's still a massive vein.
Okay.
So you're not going to bleed as fast, but it's still pretty impending. Whereas a carotid, I mean, it's under immense amount of pressure, and it's just going to be shooting blood.
Oof.
But,
Yikes.
so,
Well,
if you've seen the video,
sad story. Yeah, I don't have the stomach to watch the video that's been going around, but heard it was bad. Well, anyway, appreciate the insight there. Moving on to news here. If you guys aren't subscribed to the newsletter, please do so. You can go right to freight360.net and there's a sign up button for the newsletter. It goes out every Tuesday and Thursday. Get your market update. A lot of which comes from Dean Croak at DAT. And then we share a lot of the news that's going around in the industry too. So latest news, the FMCSA. So if you guys weren't aware, there's a proposed change by the FMCSA in the carrier safety rating system. And they opened it up for public comment for a period of 30 days, but only received 12 comments. So they opened it up they extended it for another 30 days. And I checked yesterday and there was well over 100 comments now. So clearly that helped. But the whole idea is they're trying to redo the safety rating system because based on how rigorous it is right now, there are over 90% of carriers just are unrated. They don't have any sort of rating whatsoever because they just can't. Where TIA is advocating for more of a red light, green light, basically like a go or no go kind of system. So please make sure to check that out and leave a comment if you choose to. Outside of that, a fun little Halloween thing. I did see this, and it was in our newsletter. Over $12 billion spent on Halloween this year predicted, which is over $100 a person. And I saw someone's tweet related to freight about it and was like, how many truckloads of like increased food, candy, costumes, and whatever it was. It's a lot. So, but this is just a prime example of when any kind of seasonal event will peak the surge for transportation demand and capacity. These are small niches to get involved in. I used to work with a guy who he did the pop-up Halloween stores. That was like his niche. So good stuff. So that's all I got for news and for sports. Ben, we don't have I'm not going to do a full ad read, but if you want to give a shout out to DAT and the link, we'll get into our content here.
Yeah, check out the show notes. Support at Freight 360. Get 10% off your first year of DAT1 and support everybody over here and all the information we get to put out for you guys.
Absolutely. All right. Well, Satish, again, we really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your time with us. So again, CEO and president of DAT, also group executive at Roper Technologies. So for those who don't know the structure, can you explain the relationship between Roper and DAT?
Sure. Roper Technologies is a holding company that owns DAT. We own 27 other companies like DAT and growing nicely and long-term holders, so we don't buy and sell, much unlike the private equity firms. We're long-term holders in building value and investing in the leads like DAT in their respective industries. And we've had DAT in their group for a long time now.
Awesome. So you obviously were with Roper before taking a role as the CEO and president for DAT. Talk a little bit about how, or I guess what you did before, beginning with or coming on board with DAT as well, and then kind of how that all unfolded this year.
Yeah, and I think the role of Roper is to ensure that we have the best of breed leaders in their respective domains, such as DAT in this particular domain of freight, and support the teams with guidance and strategy, execution, and talent, and let the CEOs build their businesses for the long haul with a long haul investment perspective rather than sort of the next 2 or 3 years in a very narrow mindset, and make very good product and go-to-market investments to service our customers. And that's our role, to help companies like DAT. And in this next phase of the journey with DAT, needed some extra involvement and guidance for the team, such as the topics of fraud and other things we're going to talk about. And that required some stepping in and actually leading the business through the next phase here. And I've been in the role about 10 months now.
Awesome. Well, that's again, we were really glad you're on the show here. Ben, anything you want to ask in general before we get into the fraud topic?
No, we're just kind of excited to dig in and to hear some of the insights on the topics. Been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah,
and so I was hoping you'd ask me about the Bills-Pats game from.
Oh yeah, why don't we do that real quick? So yeah, ironically, I happened to be in Florida when I was watching that game. And I talked about it on the show last week, but I was sitting there and I was like, it's Bills, Patriots. Bills should probably, easily win this one, cover the spread, all that good stuff. And I made the same mistake against the Jets last year when the Bills lost in an upset, and I was in Florida traveling. And so I made sure to at least watch the game this time, and it was like heartbreaking. So were you watching it, Satish? I assume
I was. That would be the last reference to football on this show.
Yeah, it was a rough one. I mean, the Bills are sitting in a tough record right now compared to what they could be in. But anyway, so we'll kind of get into the fraud thing. So this whole year has been rampant. I mean, it's been more than a year. This stuff kind of ticked up middle of last year. 2022 and not obviously carried on into 2023. And we've seen a lot of response, whether it's from companies changing their SOPs or, software developers creating new advancements in their platforms or just fully new software platforms coming out to try and combat certain things. So it's a hot topic. And we've had folks on the show in the past talk about fraud, what they're seeing statistically and what they're doing about it. And I really wanted to get your take as, from the helm at DAT, what would you say the current state of fraud is from the perspective of arguably the largest load board that's in the industry, right? So how would you basically, take us inside the conversation within DAT? How are you guys looking at it? How is it affecting customers and all of that?
Yeah. Again, a great topic. We could probably spend all of the time talking about fraud and then some. Fraud is not necessarily a new thing for companies like us in combating it. And it comes in different dimensions, and I'll get back to that question in a minute. But if you step back, the core tendency of a load board and network between all the participants that are participating in a load board is trust. You're never going to, you very rarely even see or meet the person face to face on the other end of the network that you're doing business with. And a core tendency has got to be trust. And when that trust is violated and you're not sure anymore, it leads to a whole bunch of secondary issues. And fraud is one of those things that causes that mistrust and lack of sort of trust and transparency with other participants in the network. So we strive really hard to make the network safe so that participants in the network feel like they can trust the other party that they're doing business with. And that's a core tendency of any network business model. Fraud has manifested itself in the sort of the supply chain in multiple different ways over the years. It has always existed. It has traditionally existed on the road, so to speak, whether it's stolen loads, et cetera, et cetera. But when it starts to get into a network where you're actually doing transactions with one another, finding the right credible party, knowing fully well that that is a party you think you're getting when you actually read about it, that you're actually getting the right one, that you can trust them with the load, they are going to show up on time, etc. So that aspect of fraud has skyrocketed in the last, I'd say, 24 months, largely because of the influx of loads onto the network, post-COVID, etc. And that is usually a breeding ground for a substantial amount of nefarious activity. So we've seen a constant spike. DAT has had a 25-person fraud and network integrity team in place for a long time. But when the volume of fraudulent activity starts to surpass the capacity that you can in policing and monitoring the network, you have to take on new measures, and that's where technology comes into play. Just this year, we've had to take action on 8,000 accounts that are come onto the network or trying to come onto the network that we've had to shut off. Now that hurts, right? Because accounts, revenue, all of that is an important element of how we do business. But when you have a responsibility to do the right thing in this case, we had to take action on 8,000 accounts. And we can dive a little bit deeper into how we're combating it and so on, but that's the background. Right?
That's crazy. I didn't realize it was, obviously, you're right. Fraud has existed for a very long time. It just has a different appearance and a different way of being carried out right now. 8,000 accounts, though, that's crazy. That just gives you like pure because I mean, how many carriers are on your network? Over 100,000, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, in the peak, we're pushing 150 to 180,000 carriers. We're probably down at about 110,000 carriers, just given the carrier capacity bleed from the spot market. But out of that, if you take 8,000 carriers, that's not an insignificant amount. And over the last 2 years, I'd say there's been about a 400% increase in the reported fraudulent activity to us. And that's the stuff that's getting reported. So you can imagine what else is going on in the
So let me ask you this. So because there's different kinds of fraud, right? There's identity theft, there's stolen cargo, there's illegal brokerage, a double brokerage. What are the kinds of fraud that are being reported on or that you guys are seeing? or did I just name them, or is there any more? I'm curious.
All of those, right? So there's actually so double brokering. There is the topic of illegal identities, right? That comes in two flavors, which is stealing your credentials by phishing a phone or a laptop that you were in, and so on, and then logging into the DAT network with your credentials, or impersonating someone totally, a bot from a specific country, impersonating as a human, and then maybe even conducting some credible transactions for 3 to 4 or 5 months, and then suddenly taking the tent down and committing a whole bunch of fraudulent activities. Because this is classically what happens in banking, where somebody just sort of tests the system by being a true, authentic person in the way they conduct transactions. Deposit, you got it. And then suddenly they take the tent down and commit a dozen large transactional fraud and then move on. And then you combine that with cyber crime. It is a very complex problem to go combat. And just educating customers and educating the industry is not sufficient. I mean, a lot of players in the industry that conduct courses about how to detect fraud and so on and so forth. Those are all credible sources, and that's necessary, but it's not sufficient. You got to take it to the next level to actually apply technology to try and minimize it to the extent you can, and then have the follow through of whether it's public-private partnerships, and we can talk about all this stuff in due course here in the show.
Yeah, so I've had the brokerage that I work for. We had two of those instances in the last year. We had one where phishing scam, someone was able to get load board credentials and post as us. And we've had someone just basically calling, not even like logging in, but calling other brokers pretending to be, calling carriers pretending to be us. And we even had there was doctored rate confirmations and stuff. I will say what was really cool, and this is before you guys have implemented a lot more. When the first time it ever happened through DAT, we called right away to the security team, and they froze everything and they monitored it the whole day to see where is this traffic coming from. So it's really cool to see what you guys have had in place then. This is months ago, before a lot of the you've implemented a lot more as this has become a crazy situation. But yeah, it's wild out there.
It is it's stunning how quickly it's taken off, but we're also confident that the capabilities are here and the partnerships are here. Customers, but certainly public and private agencies and other technology businesses to try and make a difference on this, right? So we have an obligation.
I'm really excited to hear a little bit more about that too. Some of the partnerships, and again, even if you want to go maybe category by category, I'm really curious to hear, and again, without disclosing too much to allow people to get ahead of these things.
Yep.
Curious how, whether it's partnerships or just the initiatives. I know we want to learn about, guys, what you guys are doing with the AI powered risk assessment engine. I'll kind of let you take it from here on which category you feel is maybe the most immediate threat or maybe the largest. And I'm not sure if you guys look at it that way, but how do you then even prioritize these to decide which to allocate resources to? Is it all of them? And then how does that even...
That's great. I appreciate the flexibility to fly at an altitude and not get too far into the recipe, if you may. But the framework, the way to think about it in general for a company like ours or anybody in our shoes would be sort of four things to keep it simple. One would be to ensure that you're taking all measures to ensure that your cyber hygiene and cyber perimeters are secure. Because if you're not cyber secure, you're leaving a fairly large vulnerable thing. And there's always work to do, and nobody's 100% in this space. But once you've got cyber malware, et cetera, you've got business continuity as an issue, right? And there's bad things can happen. So that's an obvious one, but we put a lot of effort into that, and we've quite a few partners who we partner on the technology front to actually help us with that. And I'll probably leave it at that, because anything more I'd be sort of talking specifically about who and where and how and when. So, but rest assured, we spend a lot of time on the basic hygiene. Second is what part of what Nate was talking about earlier, which is um, ensuring that the first time use and login and creation of participation accounts in the network and the return back into the network, both at the perimeter, that is, first time registration, validation, authentication, ensuring that you are who you say you are, all of that has had a lot of work that needed to be done to actually get to a stage where it's actually quite robust. Not just the first time, but actually the return every time you come back into the network. And there's so many technologies there that had to be put in place. Obviously, basic things like multi-factor authentication, et cetera, and some more advanced AI-based stuff that we were just referencing. I'll come back to that. But that's an area that says the moat can be somewhat more secure. And Nate, I'm glad you recognize that over the past 6-9 months, there's been a substantial amount of progress on that front, because it's a little bit of an inconvenience every time you've got to get a multi-factor authentication step in place. But guess what? It keeps us safe.
It makes me happy when I do it now. Like, I used to be like, oh, this is so annoying. And then I see, like, once I got scammed the first time for anything, I was like, all right, I'm setting it up on everything. Like, I had my email hacked. Obviously, we mentioned the like load board software logins, but yeah, I mean, call it an inconvenience if you want, but it serves a much greater good.
It's almost like a security blanket you want to have around you now once you get used to it. But I'll come back to the AI piece of it in that realm. But think about that second area as keeping the perimeter safe in first time registration and also follow on authentication back to get on the network. The next thing, which is probably the longest pole in the tent, is actually ensuring that the activity that's on the network is what it's meant to be. That there are no bad actors, bad behaviors. There's a level of acceptable use policy that has always been there, but we've been a lot more diligent about enforcing it. So if somebody's behaving, they're authentic, they've validated, they've come into the network, they at least appeared authentic. They've got all of the right credentials, but then they get in and they actually do bad things, right? And we now have the ability to watch rather than you calling and reporting something. We have the ability to watch what's actually happening on the network and take action from with using technology to do that. Obviously, artificial intelligence is a big part of that, and being able to. You asked me what are the types of fraud. You gave us three, and I added a fourth type. There's probably 50 to 100 signals, as we call them, and continue to add to those signals that actually indicate fraudulent activity with high confidence, right? And so this third area is watching over the network and ensuring that we can take action. And that's, of course, technology plays a large part in that. And then the fourth area is, of course, the network integrity fraud team that we have that I referenced earlier, working with public and private relationships. There's something like $800 million worth of fraud cases that have been reported to the FBI that haven't been acted on for resourcing purposes or what have you, but in a large part also because the case files don't exist. And so partners like us, and including some of our competitors and so on, have done a really nice job in working with the public entities that are out there in providing them the necessary information at scale to be able to take action when needed. So you put it all together, now you have a cohesive response to the problem.
So what I'm hearing you right is you've got a better gate at the front door, right? You got multi-factor authentication for who's coming in the door and vetting them. Once they're in there, you now have better policing, we'll call it policies or oversight, to be able to get really kind of from a technology perspective, a view of their behavior. Is it changing? Is it acting in a way that seems in line with what everybody else does in the market? Or does it seem to be I would assume, like a pattern change? I mean, some that we've heard in the industry, and we've interviewed a few people on this topic over this year, is, you got a carrier, right, that moves one load here and there, right? And all of a sudden now they're taking 10 loads a day. And all of a sudden, they've got one truck registered, and, that should be a flag for layman brokers that are just doing it manually. But at that scale, I got to imagine somehow in there's algorithms and AI looking for these behavioral changes so that they can be flagged rather than wait for the instance to be reported and then after the fact go and eliminate them, exclude their access, something like that?
Yep, that's you just gave a signal out of the 100 or so signals that we monitor. That's a great example because the patterns and the behaviors are quite predictable. And when there's always going to be an exception, right? You suddenly took a load to go out of California from Pennsylvania, and there's going to be a slightly different pattern in that case. But it's exceptions can be dealt with. But when it's actually a common pattern that's always an exception, then you got to flag. So these are the type of things where technology can play a big role. I know we stepped over the question of the risk assessment engine in that sort of the second topic, and maybe if I go back to that. So artificial intelligence, besides all the hype that's in the media these days, it does a really nice job in augmenting what humans can do, and it actually is able to detect what a human eye cannot necessarily find. It looks for patterns, and it is able to flag and do things of that sort. And this is a good example of an application for it. So there's a couple of different things that we are deploying and have deployed and are working on as we speak. In this last sort of 5 minutes, we touched on 3 different applications of artificial intelligence itself. So let me break it down for you. So first is we are able to apply artificial intelligence to keep our cyber perimeter secure. I'll leave it at that because there's a partner that we work with that actually has leadership in the space in the commercial world that we are applying that for that purpose. We're also able to take some pretty significant actions on crime signals or fraud signals of certain type of behaviors. For example, we have what we call threat intelligence coming from specific areas or certain IP ranges, if you may, as a simple example, that we can actually detect on a very real-time basis and take actions by preventing them or popping them up for additional scrutiny, if you may. That's just one example, first example. The second thing you referenced, Ben, was the risk assessment engine. There are multiple areas of approaches, I should say, of assessing a risk of a carrier or a broker, right? What we can't play is play God and have a judgment and give a score on a particular part of the network. But what we can do is give other parts of the network very credible, high confidence information that is from this AI-driven risk assessment engine that allows them to decide what the risk they want to engage with within the other party. So let me give you an example. Risk can be performance risk, constantly late, driving history, etc. But then there's also the risk score with regards to fraudulent activity. 2 power units, 20 years in service, but only have driven 20,000 miles and no MC number. Okay, well, I'm just giving you a random example, but that risk, once we have that information, and by the way, you can tack on to insurance and a whole bunch of other things to it, we have that information. We have the performance history on DAT's network, which is not public data. Only we would have that, and the largest network. Now, you put all this in the hands of the other part of the network that's doing business with the first part of the network. That's great information. And they can decide, they all want to decide, not us deciding for them, whether to engage in that party or not. And that's the big step we just announced recently, actually at DACCON 3 weeks ago, which is the AI-driven risk assessment engine that puts the power in the hands of the network participant to decide what they want to do on the other side. So these are some of the AI-driven examples.
That's awesome. So you're really able to thread the needle, right, in a way that it provides additional trust in the market for the market participants, right, in a way that doesn't restrict it, right, like the way regulation typically does, which is usually the common, criticism. Hey, we need protection. If you regulate it, it's going to create enough friction that nothing gets done and everything gets slower. Nobody wants that. But in this way, if I've got, as a broker, better visibility into my risks in using a carrier, whether it's insurance, on-time percentage, performance, any of those things, like I'm also making better decisions also for my customers. Like there's added value all the way through the market, from the shippers, through the brokers, to the carriers. And now there's a better incentive for the carriers to perform in areas where they want to do more business.
You nailed it. You nailed it. I mean, you have an obligation to do that. And we have an obligation to provide you with the most accurate information to let you make that decision for your customers.
Well, I want to take a quick break here and give a shout out to our friends over at Lean Solutions Group. Is your freight brokerage hiring? You've got to check out Lean Solutions Group, the industry leader in nearshore staffing for logistics companies with offices in South America, Mexico, and the Philippines. They offer a wide range of roles from back office operations to web development and marketing. Partner with the best. Visit www.leangroup.com to learn more. That's LEAN group.com. Okay, so back to the risk assessment engine. Just announced at DatCon. What does the rollout for this look like? If I remember correctly, sometime in 2024, is that what we're looking at for full implementation?
We were able to demonstrate a fully functioning first deployment and prototype of this engine, and we conceived this thing less than 4 months ago.
Wow.
It was available for several hundred of our participants at DatCon to see, which was super proud of the team in putting this together from an innovation standpoint in such a short period of time. Several of our customers actually came to us earlier this year and said, we want to be part of a working group to help DAT kind of conceptualize all of this that I shared with you, not just that engine. They were a big part of giving us feedback, and here we go. So back to your question, our first general availability of something like this for initial customer use will be in the first quarter of next year. Then we'll start to do wave-based rollout, just like we've done with all of the other risk and fraud components of technology, but should be in a very quick rollout available to the broad market here in the first quarter to second quarter of 2024.
That's awesome.
What are the chances Nate and I get early access to it in 2023?
Well, I think we might have an inside scoop here, so I'm sure we can make that happen. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, so you did that in 4 months. Is there a plan to? I mean, obviously, I would imagine there's going to be you're going to refine everything as you identify other areas that for improvement. But is there any other major? Hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z at some point next year as well. And no detail needed, but is there other things kind of on the horizon for DAT to combat current issues?
Absolutely. And it's not just about fraud, but your question is specifically about fraud. So one big area that I referenced, which you haven't really made any public announcements yet, but because there's, you have to assume that it's going to be deployed in the background, is this third area of what I call the watching over the network with all of our hundreds of signals that are out there. That will go live sometime next year, early next year. We have some parts of that working now, but at scale, that'll go live mid part of next year. And we're calling it the Network Overwatch Engine, the DAT Network Overwatch Engine. And it actually watches over the network, as you would expect. This is that third column of the third area I was talking about. And that is a big deal. It is very hard. I mean, we have millions of transactions that go through the network every day. You have hundreds of thousands of carriers, tens of thousands of brokers, and you can imagine the transactions that are happening. And if you even have a percentage of that being fraudulent, to watch those activities in every action, that's a lot of work. And we have the technology that is capable of doing that. That's going to go out next year, and stay tuned for that as an announcement. And that'll largely happen in the background, right? But it's good to know when it's actually going live, and we have parts of that already in the network right now. Broadening the lens beyond fraud, there's a fairly large body of work, which is our leadership around DAT IQ, which is all of the stuff around rates and benchmarking and forecasting capabilities, etc. If you thought that was good now, wait till we have the next level of the engine, which we're actually calling Raven, which is the platform engine using the next generation of artificial intelligence. Something like $1.2 trillion worth of loads that will go through that system, computed on a daily basis, not on a weekly basis. The coverage of rates are 1,000% better on the spot market with this new engine. It's a massive innovation.
That's huge.
Step curve improvement. While that doesn't directly answer in the area of fraud, this just gives you an ability to appreciate the level of innovation that's happening at DAT, and really raising the bar on the using artificial intelligence front as an answer to some of these problems.
Yeah, I mean, and I love talking about more than just fraud. So I'm kind of curious on that perspective, or on that point, not fraud related. I've recently been able to use Ratecast and had great success with it, and I think that was a really awesome rollout. is this going to be? Is that this new that IQ stuff? Is that going to be? Is it kind of the same thing with Raycast, where it's going to help you predict outbound for the following 12 months, or what are we looking at?
Yeah, think about that as Raycast on steroids, right? It's the accuracy, the speed, the computational model, things that, if you take a step back for a minute, you're a user, so you can appreciate this. A lot of this data comes from customers like you and shippers and the usage of the network by the carriers. And we try to aggregate that in a consumable way and play it back to you so that you have high confidence when you actually use that data. Although if you have low confidence, you shouldn't be using the data. There's several other smaller businesses that have come into the market with a small set of data. And for us, we believe that it starts with the breadth and scale of data. But at the end of the day, the engine that consumes it and how real time it is and how intelligent it is. So let me give an example. If in the rate database, we don't have the rate from El Paso to Mobile, Alabama in that lane specifically for the specific equipment type, us trying to guess that based on something from Dallas to Oklahoma City is not going to give you necessarily what you're looking for. You may feel good about it, that you got it from the engine. But now with this new engine, we can actually extrapolate near exact conditions of El Paso to Mobile and actually give you some very high confidence on that topic. And that's not possible unless you really have the technology and the breadth and depth of the data set to be able to evolve. Does that make sense? I mean, it's great.
Yeah. So just about 2 months ago, we had Tamir on talking about all the data from RateView and where it comes from, how they sit. He broke it down on a Barney style level for us, but basically how they sift through and get the garbage data out, and then they've got the good data, and then what do they do with it, and how does that project on your screen? And I was always curious because and that you answered the question, right? But I was always curious if there's no lane data, right? Some of these times you're seeing just you're getting a broad geographical location to another broad geographical location, where ideally you want a 3-digit zip code to a 3-digit zip code, right? That would be like your perfect world. And it sounds like you're bridging that gap for probably some of these lower density lanes with that initiative for next year.
Absolutely. I mean, you just nailed it. It's hyper personalization, right? You need to get down to what really matters to you. Lane, equipment type, time of year, you can finish the sentence of the variables. That's what matters to you. And that's awesome. What we strive to, rather than think about, look at how big our database is. It doesn't matter.
I got a question specifically to that, and it's more of like a wish and a hope. And it's something that I've done for years, right? And it's the difference between contract market and spot market, where if I've got a load that's going out this afternoon, right? Historic tells me an idea or a range, but it doesn't really tell me what's happening now, right? This afternoon in the next few hours. So we're able to go to your market to see how many trucks are posted or loads are posted to see who's offering what now, to get an idea of where that market is now. I'd always been curious, is there a way or a plan at some point to be able to bridge those two things for me to be able to see a spot rate today? Meaning I've got my average and I can see how all of the massive data is going to be able to get you better info there. But as it relates to how many trucks are actually available in El Paso right now for a load that's got to pick up in 4 hours, I feel like there's enough data in your market on the load boards. Is there a way or a plan to be able to turn that into a spot rate predictable model?
You're nailing a use case. So first of all, to answer your great question, by the way, Ben. The data do what you just said exists. There's a level of real-timeness rather than rear-view looking historical data versus real-time data with the forecasting ability is exactly what's coming next. And the data to do that is there. I should get you signed on to our product management team.
Well, it's funny. That's what we used to do. You just use your gut, right? You're here's where it is, and you kind of do it enough that you get a feel. And I'm the AI is way better than our feel for it. So I was I got to imagine that's coming around the corner at some point.
Yep. Yeah, because Ben, to add on to what you said, the things that we manually look at now, if we're doing our job, are things like what's the load to truck ratio, or what time of day is it? How close are we to a holiday, right? And those things are not if a holiday is a moving target, right? Historically, that same date might not be impacted the way that it is this year. But those kinds of things, if those are factored in and weighed in, either on a DAT directed algorithm, or maybe as a user, you can, put a weight. I want to, give 20% weight to the time of day and 30% weight to the load to truck ratio, stuff like that, right? Maybe you can customize it. Either way, whatever it is, would be a lifesaver and a huge value add for a lot of folks trying to work the spot market, especially if you're in a crunch. So yeah, I'm excited to see what comes out there.
This is music to our ears. I mean, this is the rate view versus rate forecast.
Yep.
On the new platform is exactly making the pivot that you're talking about, in rear view versus current versus future.
Well, cool. The only other question that I have, Ben, and I'll kind of give it to you, is there anything else, like, what do you see for the future of DAT? I know you're still within your first year in leadership, but is there anything big picture vision-wise that the company has overall? I know we talk fraud, we talk about innovation with rates and whatnot and data, but anything else big on the horizon for the company?
Since 1978, from Al Jabitz's truck stop outside of Beaverton, Oregon, DAT has constantly reinvented itself. Right, 7 years after that, we had a terminal in 200 truck stops in the United States. For us, reinventing ourselves and marginalizing ourselves with the lens being, how do we drive more value to our customers that are on our network, is constantly the North Star for us. So innovation for us is not about the next best mousetrap. I mean, you heard some examples about that in the context of fraud and rate in DAT-IQ, but the next big thing of what we do to improve productivity on your front as from a broker perspective. What do we do to give more intelligence to brokers and shippers? How do we make the carriers more productive? We have actually a hackathon going on internally about how do we radically think differently about how a carrier on the road can benefit, rather than have to go and do a search in the old way. A large portion, I don't need to tell you this, but a very large portion of trucks deadhead back, and it's a problem that we can actually have solved with exactly the type of things you were talking about, Ben, about instantaneous stuff at that given moment in time. So you'll see the next wave of innovation really hitting at the heart of not just a better load board, but actually trying to solve productivity capabilities on all three sides of our network, and changing the way that business actually is done, in helping you change the way you do business. So stay tuned on that. That'll be the next wave next year on what you'll see.
That's awesome.
Awesome. I had one last question. I know we're up on time. Heard you're a real big car guy. What's the favorite vehicle you have in your stable right now, and what's on your wish list?
Well, those are two very different lists. Wish list is different if I didn't have to deal with the sound abatement orders in my household. That'll be a '64 Mustang hatchback or something in that vicinity. But I'd have to have a different garage and a different zip code before my wife talks about that car. So that's my wish list. But right now I've got a couple that at least I can talk about. One's a Porsche 911 Turbo S. It's quite the machine.
Color, year?
And then a Casino Royale edition of the Aston Martin DB9.
Come on. Oh, that's been like my dream car forever.
Come down to Florida and visit with Ben and me, and we'll get you in there, Nick.
Love it. That's so cool.
Hey, as they say, boys and toys. So
that's right.
For sure.
That's right. Well, good stuff. I really enjoyed our conversation. I got to learn so much, and I hope everyone listening is excited just as much as we are for what's coming down the pipeline here. So,
well, thank you guys for all you do.
We appreciate it. Anything you want to close out with, Satish?
Well, we really thank you for giving us the opportunity with your audience and sharing a thing or two, because it helps the industry evolve and mature and become more resilient on this. But most importantly, we really appreciate what our clients have done to give us the opportunity and the trust to earn their trust and deliver on the success. And we couldn't do it if we didn't have great DAT associates delivering on this day in and day out. So we thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Ben, any closing thoughts here?
Yeah, really appreciate it. Love the conversation. Learned a ton. Really excited for what's coming around the corner. And, just appreciate being a part of it, being able to work with you guys on any of this in whatever way we can. So,
hey, good luck with the Bengals and the Bills. I'll be watching this.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. We'll see.
Well, thank you, guys.
Ben, closing thoughts.
whether you believe you can or believe you can't, you're right.
And until next time, go Bills. That wraps up this episode of Freight 360. Check out the show notes for links to anything that we've referenced on this episode. And make sure to visit us online at freight360.net to see our entire library of episodes, videos, blogs, and more.
And make sure to check us out on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel for daily and weekly tips and content. And if you'd like your question answered on the show, fill out the Contact Us form on our site, and we'll see you next week.